Weird question. Raise your hand if you are a fan of professional wrestling. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, we're in the house. I was gonna say, I know Freddie is. We've talked about that before for sure. I thought about him preparing this message. Professional wrestling. Growing up, not so much anymore, I still appreciate it, but growing up, I was a massive professional wrestling fan. Back when it was WWF or WCW, had the two conglomerates there. It was a wonderful time to be alive, let me tell you. Forget Hulk Hogan. We don't need to talk about Hulk Hogan. I was into like Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man, oh yeah, right? Bret Hart, Kevin Nash, Goldberg, The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and of course, yes, my personal favorite, Sting, the man, Sting. He was my guy. Every week, every single week, the neighborhood kids would get together, we would watch wrestling. Of course, we would wrestle each other in our makeshift wrestling ring in the basement. It was just good, clean fun. And one of the greatest Christmas gifts that we ever got as kids was tickets to WCW Monday Night Nitro, circa 1998. That's me on the right there. That's my kid brother, CJ. That was our buddy, Nick. And that was such a great moment for us, like to just go and see all of our heroes live, you know what I mean? It was a great, great moment. We were absolutely pumped, as you can see. And now, even as a kid, of course, we knew this was all scripted, right? This was completely made up. It was completely entertainment. We knew this, but we loved it anyways because there was a story that was being performed. There was a story to each wrestler or team. There was a story to each of their angles, their friendships, their enemies, their injuries, and their title dreams, right? Wrestling, even today, is admittedly an absolute spectacle. It is a spectacle of entertainment. And it is no wonder why it is still so popular today, perhaps even more than ever, is because our world is absolutely obsessed with spectacle. As we saw yesterday with some of the demonstrations, not only just No Kings, but at Pendleton and everything else, the world loves spectacle. We live in a world that loves spectacle, and in professional wrestling, this is no more true. There are heroes, villains, there's entrance music, there's finishing moves, it's all drama, it's all performance, it's all about domination and winning and punishment and just, power. It's an absolute spectacle. So, Genesis 32 now. When we get to Genesis 32, you like that transition? Genesis 32 gives us a very different kind of wrestling match. There's no audience. There's no spotlight. There's no stadium. It's just Jacob alone by the river in the dark. No ring announcer. No music, no cheering crowd. It's just the sound of water and the struggling of two bodies in the night with some mysterious being, as Peter read earlier. Biblical interpreters have long wrestled, much like Jacob himself. You like that pun? Thanks, Beth, for noticing that. Biblical interpreters have often wrestled with what this story actually means and what the heck is going on here. The Etz Hayim commentary, it's right back there, actually, our Jewish friends use it in the foyer, notes that the man, quote unquote, that Jacob struggles with in this text has been understood in many ways. Some classical commentators imagine this man as this hostile spirit, perhaps even like his brother Esau's guardian angel that he's wrestling with, sent to oppose Jacob. Still others read the story inwardly, Jacob wrestling with his own conscience, his own self, confronting his own guilt and his own fear, and emerging, yes, a changed man, made whole, who can finally see the face of God. And of course, some scholars also believe this is kind of a mythical explanation for why Israel's descendants historically avoid eating the thigh muscle of animals. Such a wide range of meaning there, right? It's all over the place, what people get from this story. It's a mysterious one. It's a very mysterious story but it is about transformation and struggle. It's not clear at all who Jacob is actually wrestling with. The Hebrew doesn't actually say. It just calls his opponent someone. Some translations, like we read today, say a man. Others say an angel. The text refuses to clarify. It's very mysterious. And that, my friends, is the point. That's the point. Because when you wrestle with the mystery of the sacred, of the divine, it's never that clear. Sometimes you're wrestling with your fear. Sometimes you're wrestling with your past. Sometimes you're wrestling with your own reflection in the mirror. Sometimes, by some mystery, perhaps you're wrestling with God. The turning point in the story, though, comes when Jacob finally says his own name. Someone asks, what is your name? And he stands up and says it. Jacob, I am Jacob. It sounds simple. But it was honestly a challenge for our buddy Jacob, because his name, for the biblical scholars out there, his name means supplanter or deceiver. He was a tricky little booger, even from the womb, grabbing his brother's heel, trying to get first dibs at the eldest son. The grabber is another way to translate that. To speak that aloud, to speak his name in this story, was kind of an act of confession, almost, if not proclamation. And in the wrestling match of life, we all have to say our own names at some point in this same way. We have to face who we've been. We have to face what we've done, what we've avoided, who we've hurt, who we're becoming. That, my friends, is when the wrestling, the spectacle, can actually turn holy. That's when the blessing begins to take shape. And there's another kind of wrestling that our world understands all too well. And as I said, it's kind of part of that spectacle. It's this kind of wrestling that expects to win, to dominate, to control, to pin down, and take control of life. We see this everywhere. Do we not? We see this in politics, yes. We see this on social media, and my goodness, we actually see it in the church. Everyone wants to pin everyone else down with their own views, their own beliefs, their own ways that they think things should be done. Everyone wants to be right. Everyone wants to dominate. Everyone wants to, forgive me for the image, do the divine elbow drop from the top rope. 1, 2, 3, match over. That's the world that we live in. To lay the smack down, if you will, for those of you who actually got that. That was a rock reference. Had to put it in there. Everyone wants to just put the divine elbow drop down, whoever we disagree with. But here's the deal. God doesn't do flying elbow drops from the top rope. God's not about the 1, 2, 3 count match over. God's not about that kind of control. God wrestles differently. God's power is not coercive. It's relational. God doesn't come to crush us. God comes to engage us. One of my favorite philosophers ever said that God is the fellow sufferer who understands. In other words, when we struggle, when we are wrestling with this sometimes bleak and dark life, God struggles with us. When we wrestle, God wrestles with us, not against us. God is not our opponent in this ring of life. God is the presence that refuses to let us go. God is also the inspiration inside us that refuses to let go. When things get hard and we refuse to let go without a blessing to walk away from it. At the end of this match, Jacob is wounded. His hip's out of joint. He'll limp for the rest of his life, and we call this a blessing. We call this a blessing. Now, before I go any further, I would like to highlight something here. I want to pause. I'm going to recognize that for many people in this room, that language of a limp or disability, that language of wounding, carries very personal and physical weight. So I want to say this, and I want to say that I don't mean to suggest that physical disability is somehow a punishment or even this mystical badge of honor that you get from God. That's not the story. The story of Jacob's limp is not about romanticizing pain or turning pain into some life lesson or metaphor. Okay? It's beyond that. It's about the reality that we all live in a very fragile, changing body. And that God is no less present in any one of our bodies than the other. God is all present with us. God is not the cause of our suffering. God is our companion through that struggle. And yet the story still calls this a blessing. So why? Why a blessing? He's given a new name, Israel. One who strives or one who struggles with God. Madison talked last week about the significance of new names and getting a new name. Jacob goes from the grabber or the deceiver to one who struggles with God. It's quite the shift, and it's much better, don't you think? Yet it comes with a cost. The limp and the blessing, the text seems to suggest, go together. You don't get one without the other. But remember, the wound is not the sign of a divine punishment. It's a sign of an encounter. The wound is a sign of not letting go and not quitting, of being changed. Israel becomes the descendant of many. The wound is that now the community's scar, the trace encounter with the divine. Those wounds aren't erased, but they are transformed and potentially even redeemed. And so our own limps, our own wounds, our own scars that we carry through this life, they're not disqualifying for us. They are marks of grace. They are marks of how the world knows that we have actually been in the struggle. They are how the world knows that we've been with God and we have refused to let go until we got that blessing of change, until we got that new name, that new direction, that new creation, as Madison referenced last week. Even, yes, if a limp came with it. And this all happens in the dark where you can't see clearly, where you can't control the outcome. And we tend to think of darkness as this absence, this place where God is not. But I've been reminded in the last couple of weeks, and I'm reminded also in the Hebrew imagination and the Christian one too, that darkness is in fact the place of creation. That darkness is the place of new creation. It's the womb, it's not the tomb. The dark deep of Genesis is where the Spirit moves, where God is most creative, where the world comes into being and is breathed into being. And I know all of us, to some degree or another, have been wrestling lately. We've heard it in Joys and Concerns. We've seen it in everything going on around us, everything going on, what that does within us. We're all wrestling. We're all struggling in some point or another, in this uncertainty, in this exhaustion, in this doubt, and it doesn't mean that God has left us. God has not left you. It might just mean we're standing on holy ground. Because the dark is where transformation begins. In the story, the sun rises. Jacob limps across the river. He's no longer the same man. He's faced his own past. He's faced some divine mystery. Faced himself. And the part where we forget in the story, he actually, after this encounter, goes and, yes, faces his enemy, his older brother Esau. The brother he betrayed, the one he feared. And instead of vengeance, Esau accepts and embraces him. And maybe that's what this story is about all along. Not victory, not power, not certainty, but relationship. The healing of estranged brothers, the healing of divided nations, the healing perhaps even of our own fragmented selves. And if Jacob limps away blessed, maybe the church needs a little limp to walk away blessed too. Maybe our wounds, both the ones that we carry and the ones we have inflicted, are not things to hide, but to heal through, to continue to struggle through. Maybe faith itself, in general, is learning to walk with a limp. To move forward, more humble, maybe slower, but more true. Maybe our call is not to actually win the match, but to keep wrestling until the dawn breaks. That's an unattractive option to many of us this morning because we're so freaking tired. We already feel as though we've been wrestling for so long, and as we've said, there is plenty in this world nowadays to wrestle with. So why wrestle if we can't win? We don't wrestle to win. We wrestle to live. We wrestle to survive, and we wrestle to change. This is actually one of my very favorite paintings on this text, and it's by Rembrandt. See if it shows up there. If not, you've seen it already. It's the one earlier. There it is. That's by Rembrandt. He painted Jacob's struggle in this story, and he didn't paint it as a battle, but it kind of looks like an embrace, doesn't it? Two figures clinging to each other in shadow and in light both. It's hard to tell in the painting like who's holding who, and maybe that's the point. Maybe wrestling with God is not about defeating or escaping God, but about holding on long enough to come away changed. I hope that's an inspiration to you this morning. Because if you find yourself wrestling in the dark, if your hip is sore, whether literally or figuratively, and your spirit is tired, and if the night just kind of feels a little bit endless, and the blessing seems far away, this is your reminder to hold on. This is your reminder to hold on and keep wrestling and keep struggling. Because you're not wrestling against God, you're wrestling with God. You're not abandoned, you're accompanied. God is with you. I am with you. We have each other's back here. And I'm here to tell you and remind you that the dawn will come. The dawn will come. And when it does, you might have a little bit of a limp, but you also might have a new name. And we call that love, we call that blessing, we call that change. And I don't know about you, but I'm here for it. So let the people of God say, amen.